This lecture will continue our discussion on using research in education. In this lecture, we will discuss different types of research publications, the peer review process, the different parts of a research article, and how to find research articles. The first thing I want to go over is a publication versus a journal, and how these differ in terms of their review process and what they publish. Most professional organizations have both a publication and a journal. As an example, I am showing you the International Dyslexia Association's publication, Perspectives on Language and Literacy, and their journal, Annals of Dyslexia. The publication is free to all members and is published quarterly and features practical articles for educators and other professionals dedicated to the identification and intervention of dyslexia and other related learning differences. In it, they publish book reviews, brief summaries of research or positions, and sometimes some public interest stories. It has an editor that reviews and vets the content, but it is not a full review process. Most of the time, the articles are written by invitation rather than a submission process. Its look and feel is like a magazine. The Annals of Dyslexia is IDA's peer-reviewed journal where new research is published. Annals of Dyslexia publishes original empirical studies, significant reviews, and well-documented reports of evidence-based effective practices. It's dedicated to the scientific study of dyslexia. Now let's talk about the peer review process. This is the process a researcher will go through to have their research published in a journal. So every journal, like the Annals of Dyslexia, will have an editor. That editor is responsible for receiving the research from a researcher, seeing the topic that's being covered in that article, and then they have an editorial board made up of a diverse group of researchers who have expertise in different areas in education. And so the editor will give the proposed research to select members on the editorial board whose research experience matches that of the research being proposed, so that they can give input about if this is strong research in that area or not. The reviewers, and typically it's between 3 and 4 different reviewers on the editorial board, will look over the research and decide if it should be published, if it should possibly be published but needs revision. So they need more information about things like the measures that were used or how they analyzed the data. Based on those revisions, then the article may be published or not published, meaning there was something wrong with either how they did their methodology, measures they used, something that made it not a strong research study to be published in the journal. Different journals have different standards for acceptance, so different practices in terms of the amount of things they accept versus what they reject, so different levels of scrutiny. The peer review process is not a perfect process, but it is a crucial process. As Stanovich and Stanovich say on page 7, they are the first place that teachers should look for evidence of validated instructional practices. The peer review process at least allows people with understanding and knowledge both in research and in the field to review the credibility of research being proposed for publication. Now I want to talk about where you find research articles. Research articles are within the specific journals that are published, but they are also housed within databases. And you can access the database through the public library, but it's not as complete as what you can access through a university system. This is actually one of the criticisms around making research more available. So I'm going to talk you through how we can access articles through the Mount St. Joseph database system. The first database that you always want to check in education is the ERIC database. That's the most comprehensive one in education. There are some others that I'll talk about as well that are very good. So to access ERIC through Mount St. Joseph, you're first going to go to My Mount. And when you go to My Mount, make sure you log in. You can only access library services if you are logged in. Next, go to the Academics tab. And then under Academics, you're going to want to scroll down until you find Library. When you get to the Library page, you're going to want to click on Articles. And then all of the databases available at Mount St. Joseph will come up. And the best thing to do, as I think, is to search databases A through Z, and then click on E for ERIC, and then you'll see ERIC in the menu of options. Other good E databases in education are Education Full Text, Education Research Complete. Note, you do not want to use the public access version of ERIC. That one is not as complete in terms of research articles as the regular ERIC, Educational Resources Information Center. So once you click ERIC, the search menu for ERIC will pop up. A couple things to note on the search menu. You're going to type in your search words right here, and then note the drop-down menus. So you're going to tell ERIC what kind of search you want to do. Search by title, author, subject, and so forth. You can also combine searches. Down here below, you can push this radio button to note that you only want peer-reviewed articles when you're searching. ERIC does include a number of things that are not peer-reviewed. So if you want to limit your search to peer-reviewed articles, make sure to note that button. You can search by title if you have a specific article you want. For example, the activity that you're going to do for this class next. You can just write the title right in here and then make sure on the drop-down menu you note that you're searching by title. You can also search by author's name if you want to find all the research by Louisa Moats, for example. Or by subject. Say you're really interested in vocabulary instruction and you want to find articles around how to teach vocabulary. You could search by subject, and then you also might want to combine that with a search by age level. So you might want to search elementary students. Once you run your search, then the abstracts of all of the things that meet your search criteria will pop up. You then can click on the abstracts that you want to look at in full text. And there's usually a full text button to click on right there. Finally, I want to talk about the format of a research article. The APA Style Manual is a nice resource to understand the parts of a research article. This helps you know what information you can find in each section. The abstract is a complete brief summary of the article. It's a great place to start to know if this article is what you're looking for. Next is the introduction. The introduction includes a review of the literature connected to this research topic. It will let you know this research study's connection to the larger research base. The introduction also ends with a purpose of what this research is studying, so a statement of the problem or the research questions or the hypothesis. Next is the methods section. In the methods section, you'll find information about the participants in the study, the instruments that were used, the procedure, and the data analysis that was done. The next section is the results. This is where you learn what the results were for this study. And then finally, the discussion. In the discussion, they talk about the findings and what they mean in terms of implications in the field. The very end is references, tables, and they may have included appendices. The next activity in the course is going to ask you to find an article in ERIC. So this lecture is really important in helping you do that. So please go to My Mount, go to the library, go to ERIC, and track down this article. Once you find the article, you're going to want to download it because you're going to submit that as part of the activity. And then you're going to answer these 5 questions about the article. So the slide I just went over around the parts of a research article will help you locate this information. And again, the APA Style Manual is a great resource to help you understand the different sections of a research article.